Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. Today we're in the kitchen garden. We're going to have a bit of a look around, but there are a few things that I especially want to show you, including a young apple tree that I transplanted. It's got some fruit that's ready to harvest and we're going to give that a try. I've also got another apple tree dropping its fruit, so we want to finish harvesting those apples. And I also want to show you my gorgeous raspberry bushes that are loaded with fruit. First up, we're going to have a look at this young apple tree that I transplanted earlier in the year. I did make a video and I'll leave a link in the description to that. I've just covered the apples with these little bags rather than net the whole tree. Now, they don't look anything like the parent tree, which is the Jonagold just behind me, which we'll be having a look at shortly. It might be more like the Golden Delicious. I think Jonagold is a Jonathan and Golden Delicious. I'm not sure, but I will double check that. But these apples look more like, Golden Delicious type apple. I thought today we'll give this a try. Apple trees that have grown from seed aren't always the best, so it was kind of cross your fingers with this tree whether these apples would be any good. But let's give it a try and I'll work out whether it's worth keeping this tree. These are just little produce bags that I've got that I use if I ever need to buy anything from the supermarket. Now it's caught a few of the apples that didn't quite make it, so we'll throw those to the chickens, I think. But we've got this one apple here that has dropped off by itself, so hopefully that means it is ripe. So let's give this a try. Okay, the moment has come. We'll see how good this tree is. It's not very good. That's pretty horrible. Oh. It's definitely not like its parent plant. So what do you do with an apple tree that grows fruit that's really not palatable? Well, instead of just chopping it down and replacing it, what I might do is let this tree grow and use it for grafting on different varieties. I haven't tried grafting before, and I think this tree, if it continues to grow quite vigorously, will be perfect for just trying different varieties and seeing if I can develop some grafting skills. Moving on now from our young apple tree, we'll come to the older tree that was the parent, and it's been growing here for sort of 6 years. I did have it in a pot for a couple of years before that, so it is a fairly old tree and it's really kicked in. The apples are big and beautiful. Let's take a look. So as I mentioned before, this is a Jonagold tree, and let's just grab that one off. Oops. It grows these big, beautiful apples. Now this year I didn't do any thinning. I just left it to its own devices. I did notice a couple of weeks ago it was starting to drop fruit, so I've been collecting those, but today I think we need to finish getting the rest of these apples off the tree. But first up, I think I'll attempt to get this netting off, which might make it a bit easier to move around this tree. Now I have just held it down in places with boards to keep the little birdies out. It kind of works okay, except where the netting's kind of overstretched and the boards don't quite hold it, but for the most part it's worked. Now I might do a little bit of pruning at the top while I pull this off, but I'm not too worried about that. All right. Well, that'll make it easier to get in and around the tree now. This apple tree, as I've mentioned earlier, has dropped some fruit already, and it's given kind of a big basket full, but it's still got plenty of fruit on it. Compared to last year, there's not as many, but I think for that reason, these fruit are a lot bigger, and the tree's been able to put into each piece of fruit just a bit more effort. All right, let's get these fruit off the tree. Now my net might have kept the birds out, but judging from that, It didn't keep all the little critters out. I think that might have been little rats or mice. Anyway, that'll go to the chickens. Looks like we might have to change to a crate. And just like that, we're done. Now these apples are really delicious. They're very sweet. So if you can get your hands on a Jonagold apple tree, do so. You'll really love it. Now my usual way of preserving apples is just to slice them up and mix them with a mixture of lemon juice, cinnamon and honey and dehydrate them, and they're just delicious. Just next to my now bare apple tree, we have my pond. Now it has looked better over the years. It suddenly went green during this year and I couldn't see any fish and I thought everything had died, but there's just masses of little fish in this pond. What I will be doing, hopefully in the next few months, is building a bog filter, and I'll be sure to film that and show you what I do and how well it works, because it'd be really lovely to check out these little fish a bit more. Now that we've got our apples done, let's take a look around the rest of the garden, starting with my black currant just here. This black currant plant has been in since I started the kitchen garden, sort of 5, 6 years ago, and it's huge. Now I know I don't prune it as often as probably you should, and I'm probably not getting the fruit that I could be getting from it as a result. But I find blackcurrant harvesting fairly tedious, so I'm happy with what I've got off this bush, and I've popped them in the freezer. And what you can do with the blackcurrants from the freezer is sort of roast them with berries and enjoy them with, you know, a bit of cream or yogurt or something. I have also dehydrated them and used them in cooking. I made a little Christmas pudding this last Christmas. Included some dried black currants and dried blueberries instead of the sultanas, and it really made for a delicious pudding. So you can use black currants kind of like that, or you could make blackcurrant jellies or throw them in with other berries for jams. Now we've been having a really hot, dry summer this year, which has followed a fairly dry year right throughout. And I have noticed that my kiwi fruit have felt the effects of the lack of moisture and the high temperatures. Now I don't water much. This season I've watered a couple of things in my kitchen garden, whereas last year I didn't have to. I have watered my kiwi fruits just because I was a bit worried that they might die. I've also watered my raspberries, which we'll be seeing a bit later, and one of the young plants that I've got in as well. So most of this garden hasn't received any additional water, but a few things I just felt needed it. They were kind of getting a bit crispy. Now just through here you can see my rhubarb plants, which I haven't watered at all, and they haven't really been producing like they could if they'd had lots of moisture. But I'm not too worried about that. I don't always harvest the rhubarb. I kind of use it more as a mulching plant because I've got lots of them. So they're surviving quite well without having to put the water on them. This little tree here is a young orange tree, and I haven't watered any of the other citrus, but I did give this a little bit extra because I'm still nurturing it into life. It's a fairly young tree at this point, so I didn't want to lose that. Now just behind it here is my red currant, again looking fairly crispy, but I managed to harvest quite a few red currants off it, enough to make some red currant jelly for Christmas, so that was exciting. Just next to my red currant, I've got my other apple tree that's in the kitchen garden, and this one's a Crips Pink. It does ripen a bit later than my Jonagold, which is great for preserving reasons. You're not sort of overloaded too much. These apples are still a month or 6 weeks away, and they do go quite pink when they're ripe. And they're another sweet, delicious apple. Some of these apples, a bit like last year, are getting this black spot, sort of a scab on them, but not as not as many as last year, so it's kind of looking promising that we'll eventually get over that issue. Under this netting, which I really should have removed by now, are my boysenberry vines, which produce an abundance of berries, really big, juicy berries that are delicious. They're usually in December. It was just before Christmas that I got most of the fruit off it, and I generally keep that for making jam. Sometimes I'll use it in a roastberry, you know, with the yogurt, which is really nice, but most of this will go for making jams. Now I've just spotted someone hiding in these vines. It's always amazing where frogs turn up. They love to hide in all this foliage. Now to my oldest two citrus trees. This is a Lisbon lemon, and just next to it is my Tahitian lime. The lemon tree has got some fruit on it, but it's not very abundant at the moment. But the lime is really coming up with lots of fruit, so I'll be having lots of limes to pop into the freezer. Now this lemon tree is getting pretty much on the really tall side, so I'm going to have to hack that back down. My lime tree, however, is a really nice shape. It's sort of going out wide rather than tall, so I'm going to just keep it sort of trim around the edges, so it's a fairly compact tree. In the middle of the garden, I've got some gooseberries. These ones in this garden don't do very well. In the swales, I seem to get a lot of fruit on those bushes, so I don't know what these ones are missing, maybe a bit of light. I've got my mandarin tree there, which, like the lime tree, has got lots of young fruit coming on it. And right next to it is the lovely lemon myrtle, which is just finishing flowering. It has gorgeous little flowers, but lemon myrtle is an Australian native that you can just use as a tea, and it gives it a really gorgeous flavour. Now I do have a new lemon tree in the garden. Now this one's a Maya lemon. I do find the Lisbon lemon aren't that great, and I've always enjoyed a Maya lemon, so I've planted that. Now I have planted this tree as a memorial to yet another one of my dogs. Unfortunately, just in the week before Christmas, my two dogs got bitten by a snake, and poor little Rusty boy didn't survive the day. Evie was in hospital for a couple of nights and then took about 4 weeks to recover, and so she's still with me. But we've got little Rusty. He's buried here under this lemon tree, so I'm sure it will grow beautifully with his help. But yeah, it really broke my heart. My lovely neighbour who helped me on that day gave me this red geranium in memory of Rusty. So I've got that planted here with what will be a beautiful tree. Now the area around Rusty is usually sort of filling up with Swiss chard by now, but because of the really dry season and I haven't done much additional watering, we've only got a few plants starting to come along and a little bit of flat leaf parsley. But once we get some rains again, I'm sure this area of the garden will fill up with all the plants that I've normally got growing there. I do have one pumpkin that's volunteered, again probably a bit too late. It's struggled with the heat, and you can see it's a bit affected with the heat today as well. I do have some of my herbs in this garden going well. Got the rosemary over the back there, lemon balm which has kind of gone to flower. We've got oregano there. Fennel seems to grow well here, as does the yarrow. And over there we've got the beautiful pineapple sage. Now it's usually in autumn that these plants flower, and they produce masses of this beautiful red flower that draws in an eastern spinebill, which is a most gorgeous bird. So it's really wonderful having this plant in my garden. Now that brings us to my berry patch. This patch has got raspberries, as you can see, But also hiding in here are 6 blueberry plants. Now, the blueberries were a little overtaken by the raspberries this year, and I didn't trim the raspberries back. Last year I got masses of blueberries, so much that I've still got them in the freezer, and I didn't get as many raspberries last year. So I thought I'd select the garden for raspberries this year. Who knows what I'll do next year with the pruning, but I'm really loving the raspberries at the moment. Now, as I might have mentioned earlier, one of the plants I have been watering is my raspberry vines, just so that I get the big juicy raspberries rather than shriveled up little dry ones. I just think it's worth the time and effort to put some water onto these plants for the moment, because I love to make jam out of the raspberries, which I've got up at my little stall at the moment. I've got boysenberry jam, raspberry jam, peach jam, all sorts of jams. So it's really worth putting in just that little bit of extra effort to make sure that these plants grow well. Now, something that I did notice with letting the raspberry plants take over this garden is the blueberries have grown amazingly. It's like they're trying to compete for the light, so they've really shot up. I think this plant has doubled in size underneath all of these raspberry vines. You can see one of the blueberries just in here with some great growth on it. I also didn't put a netting over them, which I think has helped with the growth as well. And it's just been a really easy year this year without having to keep picking all the beautiful blueberries. It's not like I haven't had any blueberries. I've been able to sneak in just for a snack when I've wanted some blueberries. I just haven't added any to the freezer. Harvesting raspberries is a bit like harvesting blueberries. They don't come all at once, so you kind of got to add it to your routine. I've been harvesting blueberries each morning or every second morning, depending on how they go. And it only takes, 10 minutes or so. It's actually a lot quicker than the blueberries. So part of the routine, I throw it in the freezer just as is into bags, and then I can drag that out when I need it to enjoy, either for jam, or I have been dehydrating some of the raspberries along with dehydrating some blueberries, and I make this homemade chocolate, which is absolutely delicious, and I find it makes a really great gift for people. So it's really nice to have all these extra raspberries for doing that sort of thing. Now, this raspberry patch has been here. Well, it started off on the other side of the little pond, and it's crept its way around. So it's been over this side. This is probably its 3rd year. So as you can see, there's just masses of canes. I will be establishing some more raspberry patches in my swales so I can sort of claim back my blueberry bed. But for the moment, I'm really loving this here. Well, that's another jar of beautiful raspberries that I'm going to add to the freezer for later use. I hope you've enjoyed the couple of harvests we've done today and the look around the kitchen garden. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.